listening to Owning the Buy Box, an IPSecure podcast. This is the podcast for agencies and brands who want to master Amazon, push out unauthorized competition, and take their business to the next level. You're about to hear a conversation that'll help you maximize your growth on Amazon by owning the Buy Box. Let's get into the show.
Welcome to the next part of this podcast with Paolo Ascoli, Director of Ecommerce at Corsearch. I'm your host, Dave Cooper, the CEO and founder of IPSecure. Let's begin. So if I was a customer of Corsearch's in another part of the business and I came to you and I said, look, I've got this problem on Amazon, how can Corsearch help me tackle this? And it doesn't have to necessarily specifically be Amazon. I think these problems translate to lots of different platforms, right? But I have a marketplace issue, Paolo, and I think, we probably have some counterfeits there because like everybody else, who doesn't. But I think my big problem is gray market and the damage that's doing to my consumer experience and my pricing.
If you came to me with this statement, I would tell the first answer that I would give you is that Corsearch offers a 360-degree solution to answer this question. Budget aside, so if we had good budget, like budget was not a problem.
Unlimited budget. Our budget's unlimited, Paolo.
I would definitely put the client in front of a solution or a package that would entail monitoring marketplaces globally. Corsearch has the market advantage of being of casting a very wide net on the online scene, meaning that we look at marketplaces globally. We have in our platform settings, we have above 1,400 marketplaces, above 2,200 historically. So some of them obviously died, went down, just stopped working, etc. But on the thousands, with recurrent scraping up to a daily recurrence. We monitor obviously websites as well. We monitor social media, above 50 different social media platforms. We have the possibility of monitoring app stores, and so we really if it is online, Web 3.0, NFTs, if it is online, we can monitor it. From a pure solution, let's say, proposition perspective, anti-counterfeiting, in my opinion, is fundamental. So that would fall under our brand protection solution package, meaning the core intellectual property violation, analysis, assessment, and enforcement strategy connected to it. From a gray trade perspective, the e-commerce solution, part of the e-commerce solution is a service called Gray Trade Monitoring and Enforcement. So it's very descriptive. But the way that it distinguishes itself from the common brand protection one is that when you collect content for a brand protection purpose, you try to look for the infringement. So you have a different mindset. You're more of a sniper rifle. You look at the infringer. If your client tells you the red shoe is infringing, then you look for the red shoe. You forget about the rest. Now, the e-commerce gray trade analysis and enforcement project does the inverse. We forget about the red shoe and we just look at everything else. We need to tell you whatever is online for your brand, up to a product, category, and pricing specification. When you get to that level of analysis, which can be more or less granular depending on the needs of the client, you start having insights on product movements and market diversion that you cannot have with a normal brand protection program. A normal brand protection program just simply does not have time and resources to dedicate itself to look at the market that way. Last but not least, obviously, a lot of the efforts that we that we derive from our brand protection and e-commerce solutions don't stop at the online scene. They also go in the offline scene. We have an dedicated investigations department known as the intelligence department, who offers that extra step of offline analysis, online and offline analysis through OSINT human techniques that really helps closing the gap with the analysis that we carry out online. This is naturally corroborated by delivering specific investigative reports that usually also in some cases end up with the application of our enforcement team, which is a dedicated team that leads the efforts, Corsearch's efforts with offline police, offline investigator and police bodies in multiple jurisdictions in the world. So we support with offline raids and support the police with obviously documentation and evidence into criminal and civil litigation. So that's
I think having those two together is really a compelling value proposition.
If the budget is unlimited, then the sky is really the limit. And I would say that this would be the most complete 360-degree approach that a client could receive.
And again, in the context of Amazon, they're forcing you as a brand owner to go much further than you had to before, right? Like test purchases. They're literally doing enforcement at the SKU level. So if I find a counterfeit I buy a product from you and it's counterfeit and I report you, yes, they will take action against you as a seller on that listing, but they will allow you to continue to sell everything else in your store, which again could also be counterfeit, could also be infringing. So you've got to do test buys. I think if you're a brand and you're trying to protect your customers in the marketplace space and your IP, and you're not buying large quantities of product to test and to track and trace and reverse engineer, you're going to have a really difficult time removing a significant quantity of these bad actors, because Amazon wants that proof. They want that connection between the online and the offline. And let's face it, Amazon is a reflection of society because it's so big. So, it's really just a symptom. And I agree with you. What I think brands truly want is they want to treat the symptom. So it's not making them sick and it's not very visible and it's not hurting their customers. And that's great. Let's treat the symptom of the disease and manage it. But we really need to find the cure, right? And the cure lies with the source. So I think that's great that you guys are bringing together, those processes for me as a brand owner, again, with my unlimited budget. Because you're right. It's not, it's a big endeavor. This is, trying to control the distribution channel on the internet is not a trivial thing. It is a significant endeavor, and depending on the brand, could be of quite an expensive endeavor. So you really have to launch your resources wisely, right? And that's why I think advice from someone like you and your team is really critical, because it sounds like what you would do for me is assess my problem initially, right? Do that really large data collection and analysis. So I really understand, because I bet you a lot of brands come to you and they go, we know we have a problem. Our sales team calls us every day and says they're getting killed on Amazon. They're getting killed over here, right? I know I have a problem, but I don't really know maybe what it is and where it's coming from. Is that true? Do you find that quite a bit?
It happens often. And we do have a dedicated team that helps us scope that need, that requirement. One of the things that I think that in most cases, at least, we see happening is that with new clients, are a bit more skeptical of investing money in programs such as for brand protection and great trade. They want to see the result before they actually dedicate themselves to it. One word of warning that I always give to clients is that you need to make sure first and foremost that you know the direction where you want to go, and as much as we are Corsearch and we would tell you where we're going, that really needs to come from a business, like internally from the business, and that opting for let's say demos or smaller programs often is not the best choice, because the level of dedication, attention, and care that we see from clients during those smaller programs is quite low, because there's the feeling that whatever, if it doesn't go, it doesn't go. I didn't spend a dime, or I spent very little. I don't mind. But that also becomes the double-edged sword, that because you didn't care and because you didn't put effort in looking at the markets properly and assessing the risks, you didn't see the risk, you didn't find it. And so I always suggest starting small, but starting properly with a proper program, and then eventually adding to it when you have a better idea of the size of the issue, and obviously whether you need a solution. Because let's be honest, sometimes you probably may not have a problem. It's perfectly fine. But at least to have that 12-month cycle to give you like that healthy 12-month cycle to give you a good understanding of what is happening, is, in my opinion, the best way forward for any new brand that wants to test the waters and try.
And have a concrete goal.
100%.
Your goal can't be, let's do some stuff, let's take down some sellers. Like, that's not a goal. That's a process, which inevitably leads you to a result. And the result can be nothing, right? I mean, I remember years ago, I went to a meeting with a large software association, and the woman who ran the group at this time, she walked in and she said, I've been here for 10 years. She said, we've taken down 10 million marketplace listings. And I thought, well, what am I doing here then? If the problem is solved and you've solved it with your 10 million takedowns, why did you ask me to come here and discuss, new solutions with you? Because it's not working. It doesn't work. Because, the volume of activity is meaningless. It's the impact that activity has. And is there an impact? And how big is it? And what kind of impact is it? That's what really matters. And, not enough brands, I think, are focused on that. But it is much better than it used to be. I think more brands today are beginning to understand that, their success and the relationship with their customer that you described earlier, that brand equity, right, that gets transferred, that's paramount. And we've got to protect that. That should be the goal, right?
Brand protection and gray trade monitoring should be a cost of business today. They cannot be avoided.
If I was just starting my program, what would be some of the things that you would suggest? Let's just say I'm a new brand. I know that's like unheard of, but let's say I'm a new brand and I've skyrocketed, to massive growth, especially in the marketplace space, and I don't have a program. What would be the sort of foundational steps that you think you would suggest to me? I certainly understand collecting the data and doing that type of assessment. But I just mean strategically, would it be like hardening my IP rights, or would it be hiring a vendor and getting the data, like just practical stuff?
100%. Your IP portfolio needs to be sharp, needs to be up to speed where you are in the world. But very, very simply, not where you are as in where you are as where you officially are as a business, where you are as a product, like as a brand. You could have, again, unauthorized sellers offering your product in another country, and then you need to be there. This follows a bigger principle that is sales driven, but basically you need to be where your consumers are. That sounds obvious, but not for many people. So that realization is very important. So sharp IP portfolio protection that doesn't necessarily limit yourself at word and figurative marks, but that also considers copyright protection, design law. And when you come down to that level of understanding of intellectual property, it can vary drastically across regions, obviously, because the threshold of novelty and originality does diverge per country.
Yeah, a lot of brands try to expand, and then they realize there are sellers in those markets already offering their products. Exactly. Right. And to your point, if you don't own the IP in that local jurisdiction, you really can't do anything about that.
Unfortunately not.
I mean, at least not quickly and not inexpensively.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. The second obviously idea would be assessing the threat, obviously, and the risk. And that's where obviously external providers come in play with the level, obviously, of technology and the experience. They can provide you with that level of understanding fairly quickly. Depends obviously on the size of the brand, but fairly quickly. And then the third step would be a clear understanding of the legalities, meaning what can you do then? Providers like us, like Corsearch, do give you that answer. We do give you those answers already, but only to a certain extent, as obviously we are not law firms. We cannot act as a legal counsel. Obviously, we need to be careful with that. And that is why with cases such as local laws, regulatory, particular assessments of trademark similarity even, or, copycats, design infringements, you need to have an in-depth legal assessment. That is extremely important, because remember, platforms are not judges. They would not act on, I would say, cases of non-identical infringements or not clear-cut violations. These are the only ones they do. So cases where there's a little bit of interpretation that they don't consider those. So having a clear, interpretation of the law with the legal counsel is fundamentally important. And then just constantly reassess your priorities. The market evolves. Strategies must evolve. Doing enforcements of millions of listings that have no impact, as you said, because they may have worked 10 years ago, but now it's like your products have moved. You've issued new releases. You have a completely different inventory. We're still enforcing on items from 2017. That makes no sense. So to have that level of proactivity, you need the people that think about these problems and opt for those changes and adaptations on the strategy. These would be my 3 suggestions.
Yeah, no, those are great. Those are great suggestions and quite appropriate, from the perspective of Corsearch. I think you're providing a level of service that's really appropriate for big brands. And when you're a big brand, you have to think about everything from a global perspective, and you have to start with your IP, right? That makes perfect sense. What do you think is the next frontier from your perspective, right? I mean, it's kind of been like, it was websites, it's marketplaces. Clearly, social media, I know, is the big thing that continues to sort of disrupt. Is it this TikTok? Is it social commerce? Is that really the next thing? Is it AI?
Website.
I bet you get 10 questions a day about AI, right? From your customers and how that's going to impact brand protection.
It was the blockchain. Then it became the Web 3.0.
I forgot about crypto, right?
It was the blockchain. Then it was Web 3.0 with NFTs. Then, social media marketplaces, of course. We need to see what really appeals to consumers. Realistically speaking, today, social media marketplaces are the next big thing, or are the big thing now, not the next. The evolution of that, as of now, the evolution of that would potentially would be the application of AI when it concerns, the way you sell. So being able to step up the brand protection game, specifically technology use, by leveraging these incredibly powerful artificial intelligence models is the next big thing. Leveraging AI from a brand protection perspective to actually achieve better, more accurate results with precise premonition models that allow us to do more efficient work, better target the real issues, and obviously get insights on it's provision models. So ideally understanding where the market could move based on a robust set of data. That is the future. Highlight on this is that the AI models would need to not be the publicly available ones. We need to create AI models that are strictly bound to the brand protection data, to brand protection driven results. Sorry. Only that is going to.
Yeah, because that's the challenge with the AI models are trained on data that's IP. Well, it's not really generic because it's going, if the AI is training itself on a certain product, or, it's going to go to that company's website, right? It's going to consume all the content. That's all IP. So it's kind of interesting because AI, what's feeding it is intellectual property assets from brands. And now it's going to be weaponized and used against the brands to perpetrate things like counterfeits or other types of scams. I think the bad guys are harnessing AI much faster than the good guys. I know there's some vendors claiming, hey, we do AI, it helps with detection and it does all these things for us. I'm really not seeing it, honestly. I do see the bad applications for it, exploding. Right. But I think the good guys are a little behind the eight ball in terms of, hey, how do we really harness this so that we can, turn it into a force for good rather than a force for bad?
It's the usual they call to me. Like the police, let's say, follows the law and the criminals are not bound from it, right? We as
they're way ahead. They're always ahead.
Yeah. The good guys are fundamentally bound by other needs, other priorities, and technology moves fast. But in this case, yeah, we try to be a step ahead. But truth being said, for technology advancements like this one, when they're super new, we're probably the ones that need to do a little bit of catch up.
Paolo, this has been a really good conversation. I appreciate it. I mean, we've gone over an hour. You've spent a lot of time with us, and I really appreciate that. If we'd love to have you on the show again in the future, kind of just keep in touch, and maybe you could update us on some of those new exciting things that Corsearch is working on. It sounds like you guys are doing really well. If any of the listeners of the show want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that, in your view?
First of all, thank you again for having me. It was really, really a pleasure. I didn't even see the time go by. So I would love to be your guest again in the future. So reaching me is very simple, via email or LinkedIn, via my name. I do believe I'm the only one called like that on LinkedIn for now.
Paolo Ascoli is only one of them. There's only one.
Paolo Emilio Ascoli. There's for now. I think there's only one. But otherwise, my Corsearch email address would be the most the best way and fastest way to reach out to me. So it's name.surname@corsearch.com.
We're gonna make that available to our listeners when we
super.
When we share the episode, with them. And thanks again for the time. We really, really appreciate it. I think this has been very helpful for our listeners. I think Corsearch sounds like you're doing really exciting things, and we look forward to having you on in the future and hearing more about those.
Thank you, Dave. It was a pleasure. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Paolo.
You've been listening to Owning the Buy Box, a show from IPSecure. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. Please give us a rating, leave a comment, and share episodes that you love. That helps us keep delivering you the tools you need to sharpen your competitive edge and ensure your authorized sellers always own the buy box. We'll see you next time.